The letters were along the 4 pages were covered with closely written words. The writers sometimes looked up at each other and smiled. They understood without speaking. Their organizations were so delicate and sympathetic. The letters being finished, each put his own into 2 envelopes, so that no one, without tearing the first envelope, could discover to whom the second was addressed. Then they drew near to each other and smilingly exchanged their letters. "In case any evil should happen to me," said Bragelonne. "In case I should be killed," said De Guiche. They then embraced each other like 2 brothers, and each wrapping himself in his cloak, they soon passed into that kindly sleep of youth which is the prerogative of birds, flowers, and infants. Chapter XXXV. A dinner in the old style. The second interview between the former musketeers was not so formal and threatening as the first. Athos, with his superior understanding, wisely deemed that the supper table would be the most complete and satisfactory point of reunion, and at the moment when his friends, in deference to his deportment and sobriety, dared scarcely speak of some of their former good dinners, he was the first to propose that they should all assemble around some well-spread table, and abandon themselves unreservedly to their own natural character and manners of freedom which had formerly contributed so much to that good understanding between them which gave them the name of the Inseparables. For different reasons this was an agreeable proposition to them all, and it was therefore agreed that each should leave a very exact address, and that upon the request of any of the associates a meeting should be convoked at a famous eating-house in the Rue de la Monnaie, of the sign of the Hermitage. The first rendezvous was fixed for the following Wednesday, at 8 o'clock in the evening precisely. On that day, in fact, the 4 friends arrived punctually at the hour, each from his own abode or occupation. Porthos had been trying a new horse, D'Artagnan was on guard at the Louvre, Aramis had been to visit one of his penitents in the neighbourhood, and Athos, whose domicile was established in the Rue Guénégaud, found himself close at hand. They were, therefore, somewhat surprised to meet all together at the door of the Hermitage, Athos starting out from the Pont Neuf, Porthos by the Rue de la Roule, D'Artagnan by the Rue de Fosse Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois, and Aramis by the Rue de Béthesy. The first words exchanged between the 4 friends, on account of the ceremony which each of them mingled with their demonstration, were somewhat forced, and even the repast began with a kind of stiffness. Athos perceived this embarrassment, and, by way of supplying an effectual remedy, called for 4 bottles of champagne. At this order, given in Athos's habitually calm manner, the face of the Gascon relaxed and Porthos's brow grew smooth. Aramis was astonished. He knew that Athos not only never drank, but more, that he had a kind of repugnance to wine. This astonishment was doubled when Aramis saw Athos fill a bumper and toss it off with all his former enthusiasm. His companions followed his example. In a very few minutes the 4 bottles were empty, and this excellent specific succeeded in dissipating even the slightest cloud that might have rested on their spirits. Now the 4 friends began to speak loud, scarcely waiting till one had finished before another began, and each assumed his favourite attitude on or at the table. Soon strange fact Aramis undid 2 buttons of his doublet, seeing which, Porthos unfastened his entirely. Battles, long journeys, blows given and received, sufficed for the first themes of conversation, which turned upon the silent struggles sustained against him who was now called the great cardinal. "Faith," said Aramis, laughing, "we have praised the dead enough. Let us revile the living a little. I should like to say something evil of Mazarin. Is it permissible?" "Go on, go on," replied D'Artagnan, laughing heartily. "Relate your story, and I will applaud it, if it is a good one." "A great prince," said Aramis, "with whom Mazarin sought an alliance, was invited by him to send him a list of the conditions on which he would do him the honor to negotiate with him. The prince, who had a great repugnance to treat with such an ill-bred fellow, made out a list against the grain, and sent it. In this list there were 3 conditions which displeased Mazarin, and he offered the prince 10,000 crowns to renounce them. "Ah, ha, ha!" laughed the 3 friends. "Not a bad bargain." And there was no fear of being taken at his word. What did the prince do then? The prince immediately sent 50,000 francs to Mazarin, begging him never to write to him again, and offered 20,000 francs more, on condition that he would never speak to him. What did Mazarin do? "Stormed," suggested Athos. "Beat the messenger," cried Porthos. "Accepted the money," said D'Artagnan. "You have guessed it," answered Aramis, and they all laughed so heartily that the host appeared in order to inquire whether the gentlemen wanted anything. He thought they were fighting. At last their hilarity calmed down, and "Faith," exclaimed D'Artagnan to the 2 friends, "you may well wish ill to Mazarin, for I assure you, on his side, he wishes you no good." "Who, really?" asked Athos. "If I thought the fellow knew me by my name, I would be rebaptized, for fear it might be thought I knew him. He knows you better by your actions than your name. He is quite aware that there are 2 gentlemen who greatly aided the escape of Monsieur de Beaufort, and he has instigated an active search for them. I can answer for it." "By whom?"